The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenna Villani. I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Relations here at William Patterson University, and I'm delighted to welcome you today to our webinar, Digital Job Search and Virtual Interviewing. This webinar will take a look at how to conduct your job search electronically, including what is needed and where to search. This presentation will also walk you through the different stages of interviewing, as well as how to execute virtual interviews successfully. This presentation will take a look at how to make a great first impression, and tools for preparing for virtual interviews will also be provided. Before we get started, I'd like to share some details on how this webinar will work today. First, we welcome questions. Feel free to type your questions into the chat questions box throughout the webinar, and we'll take breaks throughout the presentation to answer them. Second, please note that all attendee microphones will be muted throughout the presentation, and you'll be in listen-only mode. And lastly, we'll follow up via email to share some materials from today's program. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Jenny Nessenjuk has been working in career development and advisement since 2007 with a primary focus on assisting students to gain the skills and competencies necessary to be successful and accomplish their goals. Currently an assistant director in the Career Development Center at William Patterson University, she works one-on-one with students, creates and fosters new relationships with employers from a variety of fields, and is an active member of the campus community, collaborating with many William Patterson staff, faculty, and students. And now I turn it over to Jenny.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. As Jenna said, I am an assistant director in the Career Development Center. I've been with William Patterson just over 4 years, and I'm very excited to share some information with you today about your digital job search and virtual interviewing. Again, if you have questions as we go through this, I'm going to take a few breaks throughout the presentation to answer some questions. Please make sure you type them into the chat questions box, and I will do my best to answer all of them. Can I move my, there we go. Okay, so when doing, so when we talk about our job search, there are a few things that you will need, and this goes for any job search, whether it is regardless of how you're conducting it. So the first is a professional resume. The second is a cover letter. Even if it is not required on the job posting, we do recommend that you have one and submit it. A portfolio in an electronic version, I recommend a PDF. A list of references. You need to be organized and you need to dedicate time to this. Where to look? So Handshake is the William Patterson University job search system. This was launched last August. It is relatively new and it replaced Trailblazer, for those of you who remember Trailblazer. As alum, you are welcome to create an account. I'm going to show you how to do that in a little while. It is free and you will have it for life, for the duration of the time that we have Handshake. I also recommend Indeed.com, and really one of the best sources for job searching is company-specific websites. So this is how you would act. So in Handshake, we have a virtual career fair that is currently taking place. So let me back up. Let me show you really quickly, if you all can still see my screen, I'm going to show you how to log into Handshake or to create your account. So what you'll do is you'll go to app.joinhandshake.com/login, and up in the top right corner, you'll see no account, sign up here. You'll click on that button, and it's going to take you I think because I already have an account and I have an EDU email address, this is what shows up. Yours is going to look a little bit different, okay? It's going to, you're going to sign up and fill in all of the blanks. What will then happen is I will get a notification in Handshake that you've created an account, that somebody has created an account, and I will go in and approve your account. Then you will have access to Handshake and all of the tools that are in it. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Once in there, you can upload your resume, and a member of our staff will review it and send you feedback on it if any changes need to be made. If not, they will approve your resume. You'll also be able to use the job search function in there, and I'll go through a little bit more of Handshake in a little while. But we do have a virtual spring career fair taking place now through June 1st that you can visit, and that's under the events tab. And like I said, I'll go through Handshake in more depth in a little while. Actually, let's do it now. I apologize. Let's do it now. Okay, so, whoops. Sorry guys, Handshake logs you out if you don't use it for more than about 8 minutes. It lays dormant. Okay, so from my end, this is what I see. So when you all create your account, this little person in the top corner here will indicate to me that there are new campus community members, whether they're current students or alum, who have created an account. I will go in and approve. Once I've approved your account, it's going to look like this. William Patterson is our test student. He is an accounting major. So this is what your Handshake profile will look like once you've created it. You'll want to make sure that you fill in the profile as much of the information as possible, okay? Here is your jobs tab. When you click on that, you'll be able to, like any other job board, put in your keywords, job titles, or specific employers, and then you'll be able to put in your city, state, or zip code that you're interested in searching, okay? Once you do that, the last search I did was for education because I did this presentation for our College of Education seniors a couple of weeks ago. What you'll do is you'll find the positions listed on the left-hand side. When you click on it, you'll see its full-time position, where it's located, if it's paid or unpaid, and when it was posted. You'll see when you can apply through, and then it will give you a description of the position, and you can click apply. Sometimes, sometimes you'll be able to apply in Handshake, and sometimes the posting will give you specific instructions of how to apply. This position would like a resume emailed to the superintendent of schools, okay? The great thing about Handshake is that these employers that have posted are really looking to hire William Patterson students and graduates and alumni. And we have relationships, very good relationships with many of the employers in here. So if you need contact information or so forth, you can always reach out and we will share that with you. We also have the events tab. The events tab has that career fair that I mentioned. So if you scroll down, you'll see virtual spring career fair. What you can do is you'll click on it. It's going to give you an overview of the event. And then you'll see over on the left-hand side, you will see all of the employers that are attending. When you click see more, it will give you a list of all of the employers who are registered. So typically when we have a career fair, we invite our current students as well as our alum to attend in person. However, because our campus is currently closed, we are doing everything virtually. At the moment, this career fair, the way that it works is you click on the employer by clicking on their icon, and it will tell you what opportunities over on the right-hand side, what the jobs that are available, and you'll be able to apply for these. Okay, this is how the fair is working right now. And that's based on the technology. There is no in-person, face-to-face component of this fair. Okay, but all of the employers that have registered have opportunities posted that you can apply for. So Aflac, Airgas, Alternatives, all these, and they're all from across all majors, looking for all different levels of experience. Some are entry level, some require a little bit more experience, some are hiring for internships if we have any current students on the webinar. But this is a place where you can find postings and connect with employers. So this is how our virtual career fair is running this semester. We are doing some planning for our fall semester, and if our fall fair takes place virtually, we're not sure at this point. Whoops. we're looking to have a face-to-face component of that fair, but we're in primary stages of planning and we're not quite sure what's going to happen yet. Hopefully we'll be back on campus and have a nice in-person fair, but we just don't know yet. We'll be following the directives of the university. I just want to mention, while it's not job search specific, on our events tab are all types of other workshops that you can attend, and there are some on-demand videos. Sorry guys, my email likes to pop up. There are all sorts of on-demand videos that are listed under the events as well. So there's lots of different things on there. Go back to my presentation here. Okay, does anyone have questions? I'm going to take a quick break because if there's any Handshake questions, I want to address them now.
So Jenny, we do have a few questions that have come in. So the first is, can we use our personal email to create a Handshake account as an alum?
Yes, you'll need to. Well, let me back up. If you have a WP, if you still have a student email as an alum, you can use it. However, at some point, you may lose that email address. So I would recommend that if you have graduated or are an alum, that you do use a personal email when creating your Handshake account.
Okay, great. And so we have a couple other questions that have come in. Do you see this type of interviewing becoming a permanent future event, or will this end when the pandemic ends?
I can't give you 100% definitive answer on that. I think that for the foreseeable future, this is the form, this is the method of interviewing that's going to be taking place. I'm not sure what's going to happen when this pandemic is over. And I think also part of it is going to be preference of the employer. And it's going to vary company to company.
Okay, great. And then we have one more question regarding appropriate attire for virtual interviewing. So
we are going to get to that shortly.
Perfect.
Okay, so we're just going to hold that question. If I don't answer your question while we go through the attire portion of the presentation, I'll be happy to answer it in a little while.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's talk about virtual interviewing. So virtual interviewing is not new. Skype interviewing has been taking place for quite some time. I'll be very honest with you. When I was in grad school, this was in 2012, 2012 or 2013, I interviewed for a position, a part-time position, and I had a Skype interview. So virtual interviewing is not new, it's just we're seeing a lot more of it now because of this pandemic, and it has become the go-to method because of that. Okay, so a couple of things. I'm going to go through this in stages, and after each stage, we'll take a short pause for questions. So before your virtual interview, the most important thing you want to do is you want to test your technology. Okay, so there are several different applications and programs out there that are being used for virtual interviewing. Skype is still being used. We have Zoom, which I think is the most common. There's WebEx, and I believe there's a couple of other ones. Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. But you want to make sure that you have the application or program either on your computer or your cell phone or your tablet, whatever device you're using to do your virtual interview. You want to make sure that you have downloaded the application or the program prior to the interview, and you want to do a test run with a friend, a family member. If you don't have anybody else, you can let us know. We'll be happy to do a test with you, but you definitely want to make sure you're doing a test run to make sure you know how to use the technology. That's the most important thing, because if you cannot log into that program for your virtual interview, then your interview is not going to happen. So we want to make sure that you have the technology and that you've done a test run so that you know how to use it. The second thing is you want to research the company that you're interviewing with. And this goes for any type of interview, whether it's virtual or face-to-face in person. And what I recommend is taking some notes ahead of time. So when you do your research, you want to take a look at what their mission is, what their vision is, any important information that's on their website that stands out to you. So if it is a public relations firm, who are their clients? Okay. If you are looking for a law firm, what types of law do they practice? What's their specialty? Okay. If it's a mental health facility, do they do both group therapy and one-on-one? So we want to make sure that you know all the important pieces of information. Now, where can you find this? The best place to go is the company website. Okay. You can also use LinkedIn or other social media outlets. Okay. Anybody that you know who has firsthand knowledge. So if you have a friend who's working at a company, you can ask them. That's great. And also, if you're still connected with your William Patterson University faculty, you can reach out to them and ask them. They may have some insight into some companies that you're interviewing with if they're well known. So this is where you're going to do your research. And again, I recommend taking some notes. Now, virtually, as long as those notes are out of frame of your camera on your device, you can have them sitting next to you and you can reference them. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to get the question, what do you know about our company? You want to be able to answer that. Okay, also before your interview, you want to confirm. So you want to make sure that you're confirming the date, the time, and your virtual location. So which program or application it's taking place on, and if it requires a link, that you have that link. Okay. You also want to practice answering questions. So career development has what's called the career toolbox. Okay. I believe that alumni is going to be sending this out after. The toolbox is here and we're going to send it to you. It's also on our website, which I'll show you in a minute. But what the career toolbox is, it's a 60-page PDF that covers several topics: resumes, cover letters, interviewing skills, getting started with LinkedIn, and then we also have some career resources on there. So in the interviewing section, which is the 3rd section of the book, on pages 41 and 42, scroll down here, we have, if anybody is looking to revamp their resume or put together a new resume, there are some great samples in here and some great information. But on pages 41 and 42, we have these practice interview questions for you. Now, these are not career specific. They are general behavioral interview questions that you would be asked during an interview. Okay, but what I do recommend is that you practice some of these. Okay, make a few notes for yourself. Practice with a family member, a friend. Okay. Other ways to practice are you can record yourself and go back and listen to it. Okay. But the reason that we practice is that it increases your confidence when speaking with employers. It also helps you to become more comfortable talking about your strengths. Sometimes we get uncomfortable, quote unquote, bragging about ourselves. And it's really not bragging. It's highlighting what your strengths are, what you're good at, why you are valuable to an employer. Okay, but it can be uncomfortable. And so the more you practice answering interview questions, the more comfortable you get with talking about yourself. And also practice shows you where you need improvement in your interviewing skills. Okay, now we want you to get set up for your interview. So we want you to choose a quiet place with minimal backdrop. You can't see me, but my quote unquote office is a spare bedroom in my house. And when I do have my webcam on, all that you can see behind me is some windows and a light yellow wall. There's nothing hanging behind me. You can't really see a whole lot that's going around, and it's quiet. I can close the door. So when I'm doing meetings with students or employers, I'm in a quiet place with minimal backdrop. Now it's a little quieter in my house today because my son is not here and my husband took him to the beach and my dog is sleeping somewhere. But I did let my family know that I was going to be doing this webinar today. So I alerted others in my home about my obligation, which is what you'll want to do as well. You want to make sure that you dress professionally, and you also want to monitor your body language. And these bottom 2 points we're going to talk about in more detail in just a few minutes. Okay, so also before your interview, we want you to prepare some stars. Okay, so the STAR method is a structured way of responding to interview questions. Okay, now this is one example of a worksheet that we've put together. In the toolbox, it looks a little bit different, and you can find it in the toolbox at the bottom of page 40. Okay, so STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And what you really want when you're answering these questions is to hit on all 4 of these pieces. So the situation is your background information, where you were, what you were doing. The task is what was required or what the goal was that you were working towards. The action was what you did to accomplish the task. What steps did you take? What skills did you use? And the R is the result. What was your outcome? Okay, so there's a sample here for you. I was part of a team of software developers responsible for developing a new finance module for the core accounting product. The completion of the project was scheduled to coincide with the launch of the new marketing campaign for the project. I volunteered to take the lead, and by using my technical analysis skills, spotted 3 small mistakes in the initial code that were causing sporadic errors and slowing down the product. I also negotiated a small bonus incentive for the team, as well as dinner for 2 evenings a week so that we could work late to correct and complete the project. Although we were 2% over budget, we delivered the software product on time with no code errors and better than target fault tolerance. So this may be an answer to a question of, tell us a time when you took the lead on a project and had a positive result. Okay, so any question that's asked, tell us about a time when. Give me an example of. That's when you're going to use this STAR method. Okay. Okay, so somebody asked before about clothing. Let's talk about an appropriate outfit. So it's all about a first impression. Unfortunately, how you look in your interview is going to make your first impression. We want to make sure that your clothing, whatever you're wearing, is tailored, it's in good condition, and it's wrinkle and lint free. And those things will show up on a webcam. We also want to make sure that you have showered, combed your hair, that you have, if you're wearing makeup or have your nails painted, that it is neutral and subdued and not over the top. Okay. Some of these other things are for in-person interviewing. So neat and clean dress shoes. They're not going to see your shoes on a webcam, but if you are going for an in-person interview at any point, please make sure that your shoes are neat and polished and clean, and that your belt matches the color of your shoes. So black shoes, black belt, brown shoes, brown belt. Also, not too much jewelry. You will see that on a webcam. Piercings and tattoos, again, you'll be able to see that on a webcam. Make sure that it aligns with the company culture and standards. So if you're applying and interviewing with a more conservative company and you have 10 piercings in your ear and a ring in your nose, which I have absolutely no objection to, you may want to consider taking those things out for your initial interview, or at least making them a little bit more subdued. Okay. And if we ever get to the point where we can do in-person interviews again, which I hope is very soon, please be aware if you're wearing cologne or perfume, either just a very little bit or none at all. There are people out there who are allergic to those things, and we really, worst case scenario is we don't want to give an interviewer an asthma attack. Also, we want to make sure that you're dressing business professional, even if you are doing a web interview. So clothing should be solid, dark or neutral in color. If you're wearing a full suit, or if you are just wearing the top part of it because you're doing a web interview, full disclosure, I'm wearing leggings right now. If I was doing this presentation in person, I would not be wearing leggings. I'd be wearing professional dress. You can wear light colors underneath, or solids underneath your jacket. If you're doing that, we want to stay away from bright, very bright colors, bright prints, bold patterns. I have this story. Many years ago, I worked for a company and I had a student who was going on an interview, and he said to me, "Can I wear my Lucky Looney Tunes tie for my interview?" And he showed me this very brightly colored, very animated tie. And I said to him, "While it shows your personality, I would hold off for your first round interview. We're going to be a little bit more conservative, a little bit more subdued." Okay. However, you also want to be in line with the company. So if your person who's scheduling your interview says to you, "Make sure you dress professional, but you don't need to wear a suit," I wouldn't wear the suit. Wear a shirt and a tie, or wear a nice blouse with a sweater over it, okay? Or a nice collared shirt with a sweater over it. Okay, so be in line with the direction that you're getting from your interviewer or the person scheduling your interview. But if you're not getting any direction, make sure that you are dressing business professional. Okay. Before the interview, we also want to create an elevator pitch. It's also known as the 60-second commercial. And this can be found in the toolbox on page 44. And this is a structured way of answering that age-old favorite question, "Tell me about yourself." Okay, so there's 3 pieces to this, and it should be about 60 seconds, give or take. If you do this and you practice it and you're at 70 seconds, don't panic, okay? The first part is approximately 10 seconds. It's your name, what you're currently doing. It should include education. And if you are not far from graduation, meaning you've graduated sometime in the last 3 to 4 years, you can mention that. However, you don't have to, okay? But you should mention what your degree is in. Part 2 is about 25 seconds, a little more, a little less. And this briefly describes your experience, including if you are a recent grad, it could be leadership positions, internship experience. If you have been in the workforce for quite some time, this would be previous experience. It could be how a brief overview of moving up through positions for increased responsibility. But it's really a summary of previous experience that's accomplishment focused, okay? And you want to try to tailor that experience towards the position that you're interviewing for, okay? The third part is about 20 seconds or so, and this is what you're interested in doing, what type of work you're looking for, and you want to highlight specifics about what you want to do moving forward, okay? You'll see at the bottom of this, there is a 4th optional piece. This is for networking. So if you're going to a virtual networking event, or when our pandemic is over and you're going to an in-person networking, the last thing you would want to do is ask a question of the person you're introducing yourself to. That creates two-way conversation. We hold off on doing that in an interview because the interviewer, most likely after you answer their question, "Tell me about yourself," is going to launch into whatever their next question for you is. With the elevator pitch, I do recommend making some notes and practicing this. This is something that before I got my job at William Patterson and I was still interviewing, that I used as well. So I'm not, I practice what I preach. So when I interviewed for my job at William Patterson, I practiced my elevator pitch and I practiced my interview questions. It really will help you. This is one of the toughest questions to answer, because when you're saying, "Tell me about yourself," it's, well, what do you want to know? For example, I'm 37 years old and I've been working since I was 14. So what exactly do you want to know about me? So this will help narrow down what to include when answering that question and making it specific and tailored. So I'm going to pause here again. Are there any questions about what to do before your virtual interview?
Okay, Jenny, we have a few questions here. The first is, do you need to wear makeup for a virtual interview?
I'm not going to say yes. If you wear makeup on a regular basis, and that is part of your daily routine, or at least used to be prior to this social distancing and quarantining, then yes, I would. However, if you're not a makeup person and you typically and traditionally don't wear makeup, then no, you don't have to. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I would recommend combing your hair. As somebody who has succumbed to being home with a 2-year-old and trying to work from home, I'll be really honest, this is my 10th week home. In the last, or my ninth week home. In the last 9 or 10 weeks, I can count how many times I've done my hair. But I would recommend if you're doing a virtual interview that you at least do your hair. And if you are a makeup person and it makes you happy to do your makeup for the interview, by all means. And if you are not a makeup person, you don't have to wear it.
Great. Another question, I think this is related to the elevator pitch.
Okay.
It says, part 1, how would you answer that if you have graduated over 12 years ago?
So you do not have to include your graduation date. You can, you would start by introducing yourself and saying what your area of expertise is in, what you've been doing. So you could say, my name is Jenny Nessenjuk. I have a background in student affairs and student services. I've been working in this field for more than 12 years.
Great, thanks.
General information about what field you've been working in, how long, and if you're uncomfortable saying how long, you don't have to. You can say more than 5 years. You can say since I graduated from William Patterson, but it would just be kind of a general, this is who I am. And you don't need to mention your degree specifically or when you graduated.
Okay, great. And then let's see, just jumping back to Handshake. When applying on Handshake, will Handshake allow you to upload a new cover letter to address the specific person in a job listing?
I believe you have the option of what documents you want to upload for each application.
Okay, great.
The other thing to keep in mind for Handshake, everybody, is you have the option of once you've uploaded a resume in there and a member of our staff has approved it, once we've approved it, you have the option to make it public or private. If you make it public, employers will be able to see it. They'll be able to put in their search criteria for what they're looking for from candidates, and they will be able to contact you. If you are not okay with that, I would make it private, and then you can just apply for opportunities as you wish. If you make it public, you will be contacted, or you might be contacted by employers, as well as you can apply for whatever you'd like.
Okay, great. We do have a few more questions here. I'll just share one more for now, and then we can circle back at the next break. So this question is, at what time frame should you change your resume if jobs are not giving you feedback?
That's really up to you. I would say, because when we job search, what I always advise is you job search for about 2 to 3 weeks, and you really want to follow up. And I didn't pull it up, but I can send it to Jenna to distribute. I have an application tracking sheet. What I really recommend is that you apply for 2 weeks and then you follow up after 2 weeks. So meaning if you apply for a job today, 2 weeks from today, you'll want to reach back out to that company and inquire about if you haven't heard from them, and inquire about the status of that position, that opportunity, and the status of your application. So it'll be 2 weeks of applying, and then you'll start to do your follow-up. I would say maybe a month. It's really whatever you're comfortable with. I got a really good piece of advice many years ago from somebody working in my field in terms of trying to find a job, who told me that you start with exactly what you want. Okay, the distance from your home, the position title, the environment, or the type of organization, and you start with exactly what you want, and you apply for just that. and it's on your timetable. So you could say, okay, I'm going to apply for exactly what I want for 2 months and wait and see what happens. And after 2 months, you expand your search criteria just a little bit. Maybe it's the type, you stick with the exact position that you want and the type of organization, but you expand your commute radius an extra 10 miles. And you do that for, say, another 3 weeks, and then you expand. So you have to figure out, you know, this is what I really want first. Exact location, exact job title, exact environment. You start there. And then you figure out, okay, what is step 2 going to be? Then what's step 3? And you have to do that. I'll be very honest with all of you. That's exactly what I did when I graduated from grad school. And I'll be very forthcoming. I did not get my first choice. Okay, my first choice when I graduated from grad school was career counselor or assistant director in career. You know, I was living in Jersey City at the time, either in Jersey City or Hoboken, or if I had to go into Manhattan, that was it. So I could take public transportation at a 4-year institution. My first job, and then I ended up expanding my criteria. My first job out of grad school was an academic advisor at a community college. It was not my first choice, but it got me to where I wanted to be. But I did exactly what I just told you all to do with my job search. That was the advice that I had gotten from somebody working in my field. And I was able to obtain a position. It took me a little time because I did that, and I had to keep expanding my search criteria. So it's really on your timetable of how long you're going to look for exactly what you want. And you may have to revamp your resume based on the type of opportunity that you're applying for. And we're doing, the last week of June, we're doing a resume webinar, and I'm going to talk about this there, but part of it is making sure that you're using keywords that you're seeing in the job postings and inserting those into your resume and changing the language in your resume to make sure that you're hitting on those keywords that are in the job postings. But I would say if you've been searching for several months and are not getting hits, I would say it's probably time to revamp your resume.
Great, thanks, Jenny.
I know that was the long answer, but hope that helps. We still have during and after to get to, and I want to make sure that we get to that because it is 10 after 1. I do want to make sure that we hit on all parts of this. So I'm going to pause the questions. We're going to keep going, and then I'll take some more questions in a little bit. So during your virtual interview, we want to be ready to go. So I really recommend being seated and ready with all of your materials 5 to 10 minutes prior to the interview, meaning family members, whoever's in your house, you say, okay, my interview is at 1 o'clock. That means at 10 minutes to 1, I am MIA. Pretend I'm not here. And you go to your designated quiet spot, and you get ready, you collect yourself, you go over your notes, the research that you did. Maybe you take out your resume so that you can reference it during your interview, and you really are seated and ready 5 to 10 minutes. And you also want to make sure that you're entering that video interview promptly at the designated time, okay? A few minutes before is not going to hurt you. So if your interview is scheduled for 1 o'clock and you log in at 3 minutes to 1, that's fine. But you definitely want to make sure that you are in that video appointment at no later than the exact designated time, okay? We also want to remember during the virtual interview to answer all the questions that you're asked to the best of your ability. We want you to answer them honestly and truthfully, okay? Stay away from topics of salary and benefits unless you are asked. And I do recommend taking some handwritten notes. Okay, so if you want to have a blank sheet of paper next to you, make sure it's out of frame of the camera, and you can take a few notes. I wouldn't sit there and write verbatim exactly everything that's coming out of the interviewer's mouth and be looking at your piece of paper. But if you want to take jot down a few words, short sentence while you're still looking at the camera, totally fine. Okay, let's talk about cell phone etiquette. So most people have a cell phone, correct? Now, if you have a land phone, I don't have one. My parents will have a land phone. I have family members. If you have a land phone, let's talk about this first. If you have a land phone and you have it hooked up in the space that you're going to be doing your interview, if the phone has an option to turn the ringer off, please turn the ringer off. If it doesn't, you may want to consider, if you have the phone in another room, you may want to consider just disconnecting that particular phone in the room that you're in. If you have a cell phone with you, if you're going to have it in the room with you, you want to either turn it on silent or turn it off. You can also leave it in another room if you think it's going to be too distracting to you. So if you're going to be doing your interview from your home office, or you're going to be doing it from your bedroom or your living room, and you think that that cell phone is going to be a distraction, leave the phone in the bedroom. Put it in your purse in another room. Stick it in a drawer somewhere where you're not going to look at it. If you do have it in the same room with you, a couple of things to keep in mind. After you've turned it on silent or turned it off, you want to make sure it's out of the camera frame, and you don't want to look at it during your interview. Okay? We want you to ask questions. Okay? At the end of your interview, so you can ask questions during your interview if the interviewer talks about something and you say, well, can you please elaborate on that? Or could you give me some more information about that? But at the end of your interview, you will most likely get the question, do you have any questions for me? You need to make sure that you ask at least one question. Okay. Now, if it's in an in-person interview, which I know we're not really discussing, but if it's in an in-person interview, the best question you can ask is, may I have your business card? We're going to get to why in a minute. Now, if you are interviewing with somebody who did not set up the interview, so maybe HR set up your interview, but you're interviewing with the hiring manager, you will want to ask, may I have your contact information, please? Then you jot down their email address. And I'm going to tell you why in a couple minutes. But there's also some examples of questions that you can ask here. What would be my goals for the first year in this position? What is your favorite part about working for this company? What do you see as the most challenging aspect of the job? What are your expectations of the person filling the position? And what is the onboarding process like? These are some standard questions. However, if you have more specific questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free. Okay. We also want to pay attention to our nonverbal communication. So our body language and what we're not saying can really say a lot about you. So we do want you to sit up straight, want you to smile, and keep eye contact with the camera. What we don't want you to do is, I'm going to move down to bullet point 3 here. We don't want you to stare at the camera. Staring gets a little bit creepy and weird. So every so often you could glance down, not at your cell phone, but you could glance over at your notes. You could just glance down and glance back up. Okay. You don't want to stare at the ceiling. You don't want to slouch, fidget, or cross your arms. All of these things may tell an employer that you're bored, you don't care, you're disinterested. So you want to really make sure that you're aware of what your body looks like while you're interviewing. And when you do your interview practice, if you're doing it with another person or if you're recording it, pay attention. Have your family member or your friend take note of your body language. If you've recorded yourself, record a video, not just audio, and take a look at your body language, okay? It says more about you than you think. So that's during. Do we have any questions about during our interview?
No, I think we're good for now.
Okay. So after your interview, you want to make sure that you disconnect. So you want to end the call and close the application or program promptly when the interview is complete. And then you really want to hold off on leaving what I call interview mode until you are 150% sure that you're disconnected. Okay. We don't want whatever you're going to say after your interview, like, oh man, I killed it, I did so great, or I think I really blew that, which hopefully is not the case. we don't want the interviewer to accidentally hear that. So we really want to make sure that you're disconnecting and ending that video call and waiting to leave your interview mode until you're 150% sure that your interviewer and the person on the other end of the video can no longer hear you. And the same thing applies if you're doing a phone interview, because that's happening a lot as well for first round interviews these days, is just phone call interviews. Make sure that you've hung up your phone and that you've disconnected from that phone interview before you start talking to the person who's walked into the room so excited to say, oh, how'd your interview go? Make sure that you have really disconnected and that the other person can't hear you. You want to send a thank you email, and this is why I recommended that you ask for that contact information. And you really want to send this email within 24 hours. You want to thank the interviewer for their time, and you want to reiterate your interest in the position. Now, after the interview, if you are no longer interested in the position, which has happened, I went on an interview once. I was really excited for it, and after the interview was over, I decided that it was not the right opportunity for me. You can just send a thank you that says, dear so-and-so, name of the person, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. It was a pleasure speaking with you and getting to learn a little bit more about your company. That's it. Now, if you've really decided that you're not interested, you can also add that, you know, if the person that you've interviewed with has been your primary point of contact, you can let them know very politely that you're not interested in the opportunity anymore. If they were not the person that set up the interview, I would reach out to that person and let them know that you're no longer interested. Very politely. We don't want to burn any bridges. You know, it has, unfortunately, at this time, this is not the right opportunity for me to pursue, or I am unable to continue pursuing this opportunity. Okay. You never know when sometime down the road, you may find another opportunity with that company that you're interested in. You also want to contact your references after your interview. So we recommend 3 professional references. This is anybody who has supervised you, can speak to your work ethic. We do not want it to be coworkers, family members, friends. We're not looking for character references. We're looking for professional references that can speak to your work ethic, your abilities, your skills. So you want to contact your references, let them know who you gave their information to, and provide them with the most recent copy of your resume. Okay? You also want to make sure you're following up, and this is what I was talking about earlier. So you're going to follow up either with a timeline provided by the employer. Sometimes at the end of your interview, the employer will say, we will be in touch by the end of next week to let you know the decision we've made. Okay, so you either want to follow the timeline that's provided by the employer, or my recommendation is, this says 2 weeks after the interview. I would say 1 to 2 weeks after the interview. It depends what else is going on. If the employer has mentioned that they have a busy week coming up and that they're not going to be making any decisions for a couple of weeks, then I would wait 2 weeks. If there's a holiday in there, you may want to wait 2 weeks. So if you had an interview yesterday, but this coming Monday is Memorial Day, I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, but some people still like to celebrate. We just got a new grill, so I will be barbecuing for my family members that I've been seeing. Then I would say 1 to 2 weeks after, depending on what else is going on. Okay, but no longer than 2 weeks. So that brings me to the end of our stages. Are there any questions?
Yes, we do have a few questions here.
Fabulous.
So the first is, how relevant are cover letters? I have recruiter friends that really don't spend time reading cover letters.
So it depends. I always recommend that you submit one even if it's not asked for. However, if you have recruiter friends who say that, and I have never been a recruiter, so I'm familiar with their process, but I've never been a recruiter. So I don't know their day-to-day specifically. But if you are working with a recruiter and that person has advised you not to submit a cover letter, I would follow the instructions of your recruiter. If you're applying through a company website and you have the option to submit a cover letter, I highly recommend that you do it. Typically in a cover letter, you have the opportunity to make a connection with the reader. And sometimes it's that connection that will move you forward and get you to the interview.
Okay, great. Next question. Do you
Sure.
ask references to be your references before putting them down? And what if you only have 2 references?
So the answer is yes. You want to make sure that you're asking people to be a reference for you. That way they have some kind of heads up, and then they're not totally surprised when they get a phone call. I've acted as references for students, and I've written letters of recommendation for students, and I've always been asked before being used as a reference or a recommendation. If you only have 2, let's try to come up with a third. But if you only have 2, then I would say you need to make sure that they're 2 strong references. However, if you're being asked for 3, and sometimes job postings will ask for a specific number of references, you need to make sure that you're complying with that, because if you don't, it may look like you don't know how to follow instructions or direction, and that doesn't make you look very good. So if you only have 2 right now, I would give serious thought to who you may be able to use as a third. You can use supervisors. You can use, if you've only been out of school a couple of years, you can use faculty. You can use, if you belong to clubs and organizations, you could, if you belonged to organizations, you can use somebody from the organization. So if you belong to a professional organization, and you are involved with that organization, you could use the president of the organization. If you are a parent and you volunteer with the PTA or you volunteer in the classroom, you may be able to use the classroom teacher or the president of the PTA. If you volunteer at your religious place of worship and are very involved there, and you are reporting to either the volunteer coordinator, or you are reporting and working with the religious head of your place of worship, you may be able to, you could use them. If you have trouble kind of figuring it out, let us know and we'll help you, but you really do need to try to have 3, because that's typically what you're going to be asked for.
Okay, great. Looks like we have 3 or 4 more questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can in the next couple of minutes. The first is, when it comes to online application follow-up, most job posting application submissions are to a general corporate mailbox and do not provide the contact information for the talent acquisition point person. How does one target a follow-up when there has been no response from the company?
Okay, so there's a couple of things you can do. One is you Google the company, you find a phone number, you call them and say, hi, my name is Jenny Nessenjuk. I applied for X position. I was wondering if you could please put me in touch with the person who is in charge of hiring for that position. Or you can say, if you could please transfer me to human resources. Sometimes it's just about putting yourself out there, even though it's uncomfortable, and making that phone call. Or if you can find a general email address or a human resources email address on the website, you can email them. The other thing you can do is you can go on LinkedIn. So say, for example, you're applying for a position with career services at William Patterson. We don't have anything, but I'm just using as an example. And you go on LinkedIn and you type in career development William Patterson. You're going to find all of us that work in that office. You're going to find Sharon Rosengart, who's the director. You're going to find myself. You're going to find our associate director, the other 2 assistant directors. Send a message and say, I recently applied for a position with your office. I was wondering what the status of that is, and who I can contact in regards to following up on my application.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next
Welcome.
question is, do you advise against bringing up personal information, such as having kids?
So legally, in an interview, there are certain things that employers are not allowed to ask you about. A lot of those are personal. They're not allowed to ask you about medical. They're not allowed to ask you if you plan to have more children. They're not really even supposed to ask you if you do have children or if you're married, what your religious beliefs are, things of that nature. It needs to be about the job. What I always advise is you have to read your interviewer. It depends. If they're talking about their kids and they're talking about work-life balance and balancing their 2 kids and their significant other and their home life with their job and how the company is really in favor of that, and you feel comfortable to bring up your own family, by all means, go for it. If you get an interviewer who is talking about is all business, only focusing on the job, and they're not talking about anything personal, I would err on the side of caution and not mention it.
Great. Next question is, how
Those
common...
things, I'll be really honest, Jen, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Those are, you have specific situations, meaning you have to leave at lunchtime every day to go home and feed and walk your dog. Those are things that you can deal with once you've gotten the job and secured it, signed the paperwork, and you've started. That's your lunch hour. You can do what you want. If it's something along the lines of that you need to change your schedule to accommodate picking your kids up from school, and the interviewer is telling you we work 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, you can ask a question that may get you your answer and say you need to leave at 3:30, so you would want to work 7:30 to 3:30. You can say, are those set hours, or is there flexibility as long as I'm working an 8-hour day? Then what you do is and then they go, oh yes, it's fine, don't worry about it. You need to work 7:30 to 3:30, not a problem, that's fine. Then when you start the position, you can disclose why.
Great. Okay, so there's one question here that I can answer very quickly, and the question is there a YouTube video of today's presentation? And the answer is yes, we have recorded this session, so it will be available afterwards, and we can share that link with you in the follow-up materials. And
Jenna,
then
I will also mention that I will at some point in the next 2 weeks, hopefully, be recording this presentation, and it will be going on the Career Development Center YouTube channel.
Okay, perfect. Jenny, do you want to take one more question, and then in the interest of time, we'll wrap up. So one question is, how common are virtual interviews with a computer instead of a human?
Oh, I've never heard of that. I've heard of virtual interviews where you are recording yourself answering questions, but typically it's not a very common thing. Most of the virtual interviews are going to be with another person. You may not be able to see them. It may be something like this where you can't see them, but they can see you. But most of your virtual interviews are going to be with another human being. As far as I know, I've never had anybody come to me and say my virtual interview was with a computer. I've had students who recorded virtual quote unquote interviews for grad school, meaning they were presented with a question and they needed to record a video of themselves answering that question and submit it instead of an essay or instead of an interview. But for job interviews, I've never had anybody tell me that they did their virtual interview with a computer. If that happens to you, please let me know, because that's something that we're not aware of that's happening.
Thank you.
Interesting.
All right.
So I could take one more if you have another one. I know we're over 1:30,
Okay.
but I'm happy to take a couple of more questions if people want to hang around for the answers.
Sure. So one question is, what do you say to an employer if you are looking for a position in your field but currently working in another position that is not in the field you are interested in, and now trying to get back into that field.
Oh, so you were in field A, you are now in field B, and you're looking to get back into field A.
I believe so.
Okay, so a lot of it is going to be focusing on transferable skills and how the skills that you're using in your current field translate and are applicable to the field that you're looking to go into. So for example, in field B, if you're using leadership, if you're using your teamwork skills, your organizational skills, your attention to detail, and those things are all still important in field A, those are the things you want to highlight. It's the skills that you're using, not the position that you're in. And some of that's going to be how you also portray that on your resume. And we're going to talk about that in the resume presentation that we do at the end of June.
Great. And I'll give you just one more question, Jenny. And that is, how recently should you have worked with your references?
So it depends. I'll be really honest, for a very long time. So I had my first career services position, my first paying career services position, because I volunteered in the career center at my undergrad when my last semester of college, but my first paid career services job was in 2007. And I am still in touch with my manager. We belong to a professional organization together, and we're still abreast of what each other is doing, and we still keep in touch. So I used him as a reference until probably about 5 years ago. So it just depends. If it's somebody who supervised you 10 years ago and you haven't been in touch with them since, not a good reference. If it's somebody that supervised you 10 years ago, but you're still involved in some way with them, meaning you belong to an organization together, they still know about your work ethic, they know how you've grown as a professional, things like that, you can still use them as a reference.
Okay, great. Well, I think that wraps up our time for today. We want to thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon, and thank you, Jenny, for the wonderful presentation. We will follow up with some materials via email, and if you have any questions that weren't answered, you can feel free to reach out to me or Jenny. And Jenny, any final words you'd like to share?
So on the screen is the link to the Career Development Center. There are lots of materials on there for you. Just really quickly, I'll share them with you. If you look on our page, there is a tab dedicated to alumni. It is there for you. You can join Handshake it tells you how to join Handshake. There's a link right there for you. Yep, there it is. You can join. It gives you information about services that you have depending on when you graduated. Under the student tab, there's information about, there's a link to the toolbox. So investigate this page. Our website, again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you guys very much for taking time out of your day to spend with me. I know everybody has a lot going on right now. I wish everybody a wonderful summer. Stay safe, stay well and healthy. We hope to see you all in the future. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.